Hello, everybody. I'm Janice Kim, and I'm doing the student guide to Vital Endgame in a video version, in addition to a printing version, um, for those who are attempting to eliminate paper from their lives, which I sympathize with. Um, Without further ado, let me show you the first problem. This is an endgame problem. And the question is, what should one be expecting in this situation? I would suggest for this video that you pause it and have a look at it and ask yourself how you would regard this situation for white and for black. And the question of whose turn it is to play is interesting from the point of view of how you would score the game or count the game while you were playing it. The purpose of that is to I realize that just saying the person who counts wins is not really enough information to know exactly why that is. And that's because counting isn't estimating by any means. It's determining what best practices would lead to, at the end of the game, what one should expect. So yeah, go ahead and pause the video and have a look at it and think about how you would play as white and as black in this situation in the end game. And I'll pause for 5 seconds or so. And I'm back. So if I were counting this game or estimating the score, although it's hardly an estimation, I wouldn't be starting from the point of view of black playing a move here. And the reason is that if black owes a move in order to make any points here, then when would he be able to do that, or she be able to do that? So that's why I'm not going to draw a line here or here, or any of these places. And I'm going to say that when white plays, black is going to need to respond in order to make any territory here. And so that is going to be white's right to play. It's not black's right to play. It's a one-way sente move for white. That's why I don't need to consider this from the point of view of if it was black's turn to play. It is a best practice to imagine that all of the one-way sente is going to go the way that it should go. Playing reverse sente is not, in fact, as better than a gote play. In fact, I think that there is a belief that preventing your opponent from getting something for free is better than just taking something yourself, and that's actually not true. So again, if it's black's turn to play, I would say play elsewhere. Don't don't play reverse sente. Reverse sente is going to, and we'll get into this later, will need to be twice as big as another move, or I guess I should say the next two moves combined, it needs to be bigger than that in order to make that realistic. So it's true that you could play your one-way sente too late, but there's no rush to play it. So this is very different than the understanding that many people may already have. So if it's white's turn to play, the next thing that we would get to is that because it's open, let's see, what do we do here? It's open along the second line. This stone here at B12 has dropped down. So it looks, it's a little bit different, but it looks a little bit like you want to imagine that this stone was white. It looks like black has pushed into a knight's move, but then didn't cut it. So usually speaking, pushing into a knight's move is not the way to cut it anyway. You'd want to jump cut it or strike at the waist of Kema. I don't speak Japanese, so that's one of those proverbs that can escape one. But this is not a good shape for black. This dropping down move will be very good for endgame. So when looking at that, one might think automatically about the monkey jump. And that move is very popular because it's the farthest that you can go, but it will also intersect with the idea of there's Ping eating my dinner. This will intersect with the idea of you don't want to play any one-way sente that is not in fact sente. So many people might try to just break as much as possible or reduce as much as possible, and regardless of whether it ends in sente or not. So just the idea that you could make something sente or not by not playing the last move, which would essentially be 1 point or 2 points, that hasn't been the focus. The focus has been primarily like disrupting as much territory as possible, and that's not what you want to do. So, but the monkey jump is the furthest that one can go. So many people will think of that first. So that would be here. And then there's different ways to respond to it. In this case, it seems most natural to play on top. Now here is where you could have two different moves that would be very confusing if you didn't understand the reasoning. So if white pulls back directly and then black blocks, white can't cut this because then black would, see the knight move, jump cut, and coming from behind, cut it off. So that's why when black blocks, white would play here. A question might come up of what's the difference between this and this? Again, think of it in terms of points. Here, the point at B13 is not guaranteed for white. And here it is. So black wouldn't want to just connect here because that would make this move an option for white. So before doing that, one would play the Atari, white would connect, and black would connect. So white has sente here, okay, because black needed to play the last move. So Gote is playing the last move. A move can be playing in an area first, but still be Gote. So in this particular case, it's going to be Sente no matter what. But there are cases where Black doesn't need to respond here because there's already some stone that is protecting against the cut. In that case, one would jump back. When Black blocks, then you wouldn't connect because we had said that you would do this in the case of Black not needing to connect. So by doing this, you've gotten that same maximum reduction and left the possibility of playing this Gote move later. So knowing all that would already put one like in the upper stratosphere of understanding the end game and the monkey jump. But just playing the monkey jump itself is the problem. Because in this case, notice where the line is. On the F line, there's 2 points here on E and F11. That was the reduction part. And then white has 1 point here, on the 13 line, B13. So imagine if Black played the clamp. So thinking of this as a clamp is hard because of this like little tail where looks like Black has pushed in, even though that might not have occurred. It just ended up that way. So it's interesting to look at this position not as where one should play, but what are the features of it. And here it's like pushing into a knight's move, even though it's not there. Trying to reproduce this position on your own without looking at a picture, just that would be a large part of understanding these positions really well. Because if even knowing this specific case, the idea of seeing it in a game is a little suspect unless one could actually reproduce it. So I'm working on that aspect, but for now, just say, okay, this is a clamp where if Black plays here and white plays here and Black ignores it, then you could say, okay, well, that wasn't Sente. So no move in the endgame is going to be Sente if your opponent doesn't respond. So in the end, okay. So it doesn't necessarily matter that Black responded here, but if Black doesn't respond here, then white's move was in fact Gote. So there's nothing that you can do about that if someone isn't going to respond at any point. But it should be large enough to matter. So whether it's threatening to breach a border or it's a move threatening something, the border itself, the thing in question must be big enough to have an effect. to change if someone doesn't respond. So a lot of moves, even though we count them as being like X number of points, they aren't actually going to affect the absolute score. So one would only play this at such a time that it would matter whether Black responded to this or not. And so that's why we're saying it's kind of equivalent, whether, here the order is this way or the order is this way. So when you switch the order, sometimes it's different, even though the final position is the same. And in this particular case, it doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. So here, here, here. At this point, white can leave it. It's not necessary to finish it all the way to the end because there's yet again another one-way sente move, which white, yeah, can do anytime there's no rush, because there's no rush to play a reverse sente move. If this was initially a mistake because it wasn't big enough to affect anything, then Black's move is a mistake also, right? So this could be giving Black another opportunity to ignore it. We're going to assume that it doesn't have to happen immediately, but let's just say it did. It happened later and Black needed to connect. So in this case, notice that it's the same F line, but there's one less point here and white has one more point. So that's a 2-point difference over the monkey jump. Most things in the opening, when we say that they are unplayable, I remember in Ishida's Dictionary of Basic Joseki, there's one line that I sometimes love the way it's translated, and I wish I could read the original Japanese, because it says, an unconditional loss of 2 points is unplayable, unacceptable, something. And I read that in an age where I wasn't sure what unconditional loss meant. But so the idea that we have people studying and knowing Joseki to like an enormous degree over, half point, 1 point differences. But then just in the Endgame, it's just like, the wheels are off the bus. So that's an enormous difference that would generally be looked over. So in a review where one was talking about the opening, one could really get into these issues about whether or something should have been played that is an unplayable 1 point or 2 point difference, and never see that this was actually where what the game hinged on. So caution here. If there's a guideline, I would say it's usually better to go higher, because it's threatening the same breach. Yeah, but there's more points involved. So if I were to count, or estimate the score from here, I would be assuming this. And so just like arbitrarily, to make it convenient, I'm going to say that there's a border here. So I would be giving 7 points here for Black. And again, making an arbitrary line, I'd be giving 5 points to white from here. So counting is assuming that one already follows best practices and knows what the sequence will be. So looking at this and saying, oh, maybe it's 10 points, or, you know, counting this as, I mean, it's not really necessary to estimate if one knows, what the best moves are. So in Vital Endgame, this is actually one of the examples used, but in a different position. And the shapes will be the same. So this Endgame position, I'm going to put in the monkey jump category, even though it's not a monkey jump. It's one of the ones where you don't want to play the monkey jump. And those are probably more. Thing is totally eating my dinner. And what can I say? I'd better stop her from doing that. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you joining me. Talk to you soon.